very special screening of a very special movie. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's the future. We're not doing premieres anymore. We're not kind of doing theatrical. We're doing one screening with Rian, and then tomorrow it's on TV for everyone to watch on Netflix.
One screening with Rian and you and all of us. I think that's all.
Thank you so much for coming tonight.
So I am going to very selfishly start by just asking a couple questions, and then we're going to open it up, and you guys will get plenty of time to ask a bunch of questions. I'm sure you have a lot. But so if anyone who is a Duncan Jones fan, as I am, has heard about Mute for a long while. It's kind of famously had a long gestation period. And I know you probably talked about it quite a bit, but in case no one has heard kind of the story, do you want to give the quick rundown of how it started, and then I want to dig in a little bit to how it changed over the course of the gestation period?
Actually, so the first draft of this script I wrote with Mike Johnson just after we finished film school 16 years ago. And I had written one script before this, and it was for a courtroom drama. It was basically 12 angry men about an artificial intelligence. And it was...
That sounds awesome.
It sounds awesome, but it was so much dialogue, and it was so uncinematic that it was frustrating me. It was like, yeah, maybe I could get this made on a really low budget, because I was trying to write something for a low budget first film. And it just became obvious, maybe I could make it, but would it actually be a good film? So I was actually, my editor on this film, Barrett Heathcote, who's here today, he kind of challenged me to write something with a lot less dialogue. And that was a character.
Like, screw you, you take the title, and you're like, fine.
Yeah, so that was how it started, and we wrote it, sent it off to Sam Rockwell, who I really wanted to work with, in the hopes that he would play the character Duck, that Justin Theroux ended up playing.
The hero of the piece.
The hero of the piece. And Sam was like, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that, but I'd love to play Leo, because I love the script, I want to play Leo, and Sam, as good as an actor as he is, obviously, as he will be about to show everyone with his awards coming up, Sam is a great actor, but he can't play 6'5". It's just not
versatile.
And he is very versatile. But
Special boots.
Leo has to be a big physical presence, and that was never going to work. So I went and wrote. I did Moon. I wrote Moon for Sam because I loved him so much, and every film from that point onwards, I assumed, okay, Mute's going to be the next thing I do. Mute's going to be the next thing I do, and it's like I said, it took 16 years.
So I'm guessing though, because the themes in this movie, and especially I saw it a few weeks ago, I guess, and for the first time, and especially as it settles and the themes in it are so have a maturity to them, to where I'm guessing that this is not exactly the same movie that you wrote 16 years ago.
It's a weird one, because I think structurally it's probably very similar, but I think the subtext and the emphasis on what it's about really, which to me at least, it's about parenthood. How do parents affect you, and what are your responsibilities as a parent, and that's kind of whether it's Leo and how his mother's religiosity and decision not to allow him to have the surgery to talk has affected his life, or how it's Cactus's lifestyle has affected poor Josie, and how she's been brought up and what she's used to. It runs throughout the film.
I found it really emotionally moving at the end. That smile from him, who hasn't smiled through practically the whole. Just that moment of
he has a little moment. He has a little moment of smiling at the start with Nadira.
Okay, two smiles.
But you're right. Yes, start with a smile.
Skarsgård is so good in it, and he has just this perfect sadness to him that doesn't, which sometimes when a performance has that kind of sadness, you can grow annoyed by it, I think, and want to shake the person, and you never do with him. He has he's like the Humphrey Bogart of sadness. That I really loved all the performances though. Talk about how the cast did come
I like
together.
to think of him as the Harrison Ford of sadness.
Harrison Ford, there you go. That's
No, I mean, I think you have to just keep throwing worse and worse obstacles at your protagonist to justify, their being morose.
How about the rest of the cast? How about Thoreau is so
a hell of a
evil
role
and creepy.
for anyone to agree to.
Yeah.
Now that you've seen it.
Well, and it's so evil, and as it reveals itself, it's genuine. I mean, there are bad guys in film where they're accused that, oh, this is the bad person because he killed that guy that we don't really care about. And then there are things like this where it actually gets in your soul, and you're like, this is not okay. And because of that, though, because he's so evil by the end, the way that he was then able to, he didn't have to play it as a bad guy, which was so interesting.
And I think to me at least, a lot of the reason it works, in my opinion, is that you believe the relationship between him and Cactus Bill, and the fact that these guys have had each other's backs through thick and thin, through the worst of times and the best of times, and there was only ever going to be one thing that got in between the two of them, and that was Josie. Anything else, they would have been there for each other, but this was one thing Cactus just could not abide.
And Rudd is, God, his energy throughout this is so wacky and awesome, and it by turns scary and endearing. It's not necessarily
Samson's mustache.
Yeah, exactly.
The power.
That's it. That's where it all came from. It's all about the stash. But it's not necessarily an intuitive. You read the script, you would not necessarily think of as great an actor as he is. You wouldn't instantly think of Paul Rudd in that part. What led you to decide?
Well, it's they were very heavily based on Robert Altman's Trapper John and Hawkeye Pierce from MASH, and one thing in particular that I was looking for was the chemistry between the two guys, and it was very much the same kind of chemistry that you'd look for in any strong relationship between a protagonist and their respective love interest. It was you had to believe that. First of all, that they were, best of friends. Secondly, that they were really smart and funny. And these are things that you can't really, I don't think you can act. I think especially wit and timing and humor and that sense that you're the smartest guys or women in the room. I think you need smart people to do that. And Justin and Paul are both writers in their own right. They're both very, very funny. And they were willing to watch MASH on a loop for months at a time before we started shooting the film.
Genuinely evil, but for some reason the scene where he's messing with the guy in the mall.
Oh, the mall guard.
But there's something in that scene where it turns, and because you find yourself, just like the characters in MASH, you find yourself alternate, you're repulsed, but then that's charmed by them, and that's one of those weird a glass of water in your face.
That was my hope was that if I could get the audience, and you'll have to tell me, but to really kind of like these guys at the start of the movie and be feeling very comfortable around them. I mean, it's Paul Rudd, how can you not?
Right.
Get the audience on side and then slowly just start to peel it away and say, actually, they're kind of assholes. And then by the end of it, he's a psychopath and the other one's a pedophile.
It's going to be the arc of this Q&A, by the way. Just watch the arc of it. Let's talk a little bit about the, who am I supposed to be watching for when we're supposed to, you, okay. So keep going. Okay, good. Because I have more stuff I want to know. Talk about the production of the movie a little bit. One thing that I've learned is one thing I've learned, Duncan. One thing when you're making a science fiction movie for not that much money, cars are a huge thing. How are you going to deal with futuristic cars?
Yeah.
Talk about generally your approach to the design of this movie, which is so unique. And I want to know just in the room when you sat down and said, okay, how do we deal with it?
Well, we knew that we wanted to shoot on location in Berlin as much as possible. So one of the first things we looked into is, okay, cost-wise, how crazy would it be to try and superimpose images of more futuristic designs on actual traffic in the real city? So we tried to do it. So there's kind of a mix of things. We did have some cars that we had on the shoot, on set and on location, to kind of dress the foreground. But we did a lot of car replacement in the background, and some of the extreme background we just left it as it was. And really, because of the aesthetic that we chose, where we had Leo's car, which is a classic car anyway, and then Cactus's amazing Stars and Stripes Jeep, which just kind of, I think, it's such a striking image in its own right, that the fact that it's such a bare bones vehicle you kind of get away with, because it's a Jeep anyway, so it doesn't have to be particularly aesthetically pleasing. It just has to look like it can cope. And I think, between that and the flying drones and a couple little bit of extra details on the digital set extensions for increasing the vibrancy of the background, I think that's.
There was a lot of location work, you're saying. Are you also
half the film was location, the other half was studio shoot at the Studio Babelsberg, which was the set build, so that Leo's apartment and Cactus's basement, and then a couple, the nightclub, Foreign Dreams itself, the interior and exterior of that were all builds. And then we found this amazing location, which was a power station in what used to be East Berlin, for the big street scenes outside of the nightclub. And then there's the backlot set at Studio Babelsberg that we dressed. It was actually a period backlot, but we kind of futurized it a little bit.
That's great.
For Leo's apartment.
Well, obviously, it's Blade Runner is like the dumb thing to say in terms of the visual influence, but there's a lot more going on in there, and the whole city, beyond just the visuals, it has a very Casablanca type of feel. It's got a very kind of like these people trapped in this place that they're trying to get out of. But both visually and like vibe-wise, what were the influences for you?
Well, I think while we were there,
and how much of it was just Berlin? Also, what's your experience at the city of Berlin?
Oh yeah, I've been to Berlin. I'm very old. I spent some time as a little kid in Berlin in the 1970s when it was still the middle of the Cold War, and Berlin was an island of Western kind of civilization in the middle of the Soviet Union. And there was this kind of real energy and vibrancy and looking towards the future in that city. And I went back to Berlin pretty much every decade after that, and it was always there. Even after the wall came down, it was always a city that was looking towards the future. There was a lot of artists who found Berlin to be a place that they wanted to settle and spend time. But then there was also a lot of immigration. I'm sure you heard a couple of years ago Angela Merkel was recorded to have brought in 1 million immigrants into Germany. And there's an incredibly cosmopolitan mix in Berlin. Not just from the Middle East and from Turkey, where a lot of people have come, but also from a lot of the ex-Soviet bloc, Eastern Europe, Russia. So it's just a really interesting mix of Western culture and Eastern culture and Middle Eastern. So when we were starting to extrapolate, okay, so where does Berlin go from here? It was really just accentuating that, and then in a sense, Cactus is really the one who personifies the wanting to get out of Berlin. Of all the people in the film, he's the one who most clearly hates being there, which is why he's constantly looking for excuses to go anywhere that feels American. So he goes to bowling alleys, he goes to American-themed diners, he paints his car with the Stars and Stripes. It's just, or any Germans he interacts with, he basically disses them. It's just, that's who he is.
Also, when he's stabbed in the throat, the sound effect, right? You heard the noise they just made when I just said the word sound effect. It's a special accomplishment.
Thank you. One of my favorite parts of that was the prop that we had built that we called the Steve Martin. I don't know if you remember Steve Martin used to have an arrow he'd wear through his head.
Yeah.
We basically had a knife version of that Paul would just slap on the opposite side of camera whenever we had to do a quick shot. It works really well. I can wear it at Halloween next year.
Did he just wear it around? Yeah.
And it had a little blood pump that you could just.
And you've worked in this film. You also brought along your cinematographer. You worked with on Moon, also on Source Code.
No, just Gary did Moon with me, and then I worked with Don Burgess on Source Code.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
In your and keeping the consistency of it. Were most of your crew local, though? I'm guessing most of them.
Yeah, most of them were local. We brought Gavin Bouquet, my production designer on Warcraft. He came along.
Gotcha.
I had a wonderful experience with him on Warcraft as far as creating the visuals of that movie. And
Gotcha.
he was excited about doing he'd done some of the prequel Star Warses.
Okay.
I think you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I've heard of those. I've read about those.
But Gavin had done those movies, and then he liked the idea of doing a more gritty, kind of real sort of not that it's not real Star Wars, it's very real.
I didn't say a word. I didn't say a word.
Can I ask about Luke Skywalker?
No.
Did he get lag?
So the drones,
just like
delivering
chronic
food.
lag?
I love that as a detail. The drones delivering the food, just grounded the whole thing. So Duncan, well, it's I mean, visually, it's a stunning film. I want to dig in I want to go.
Oh,
back.
one person I will say who was connected with Moon and this is Clint Mansell.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Right.
And we are fighting the good fight to make sure that Clint's score becomes available, because right now we're not sure.
Oh, really? Please, because it's gorgeous. So how do you work with Clint? Does he score to picture? Does he deliver you elements that you build with?
It's weird. I've had different experiences in the past, as far as using temp score or not. This one was a strange one. Clint came on very early, which was wonderful. But the temp score was really much less important than it has been in past movies for me. And it really was just about letting Clint have the time to play, and then hopefully being able to guide him from a different perspective as to what I thought the movie needed to be doing at any given point. But we had been talking about this film since Moon, Clint and I. And he knew it was coming up, and we were both, I think emotionally, mentally, and unfortunately the right place, both having lost close people, and kind of wanting to channel, that feeling into the movie. So no, it was a joy to watch Clint, a joy and kind of somewhat traumatic in some ways to watch Clint find a way to channel that.
What were not getting into personal stuff, but just in terms of the musically, what were the conversations you guys had in terms of reference, in terms of, what you're going for?
I'm a very detail-oriented director, so I just said, good. Make it really good.
Make music good.
You make us strong. That's what I always use whenever I'm not sure what to say.
That's good. Yeah, I'll take it. I'll let you. The judges will accept that. Yeah, I never with temp score. It's always like a miserable thing figuring out.
The worst thing about temp music is the better it is, the harder it is.
Yeah, because then you're screwed because you get used to it. There's this thing falling in love with the temp because you put in a temp piece of music and then it's not even that you want to have that piece of music, but you get so used to exactly what it does that you end up.
To it. You end up cutting to it.
Yeah, that's
you're really fucked.
Yeah.
Then you're looking for a piece of music. It's like, but it just needs to have a note right there.
This is why our composers hate us. Certainly, coming back real quick, just in terms of, as we started talking about a little bit, in terms of the long gestation period, and first of all, was he always Amish? Was the character always Amish?
I mean, the very, very early version of the script wasn't even sci-fi; it was contemporary, and that was like year one and two, until Moon got made. And that was because, as I said, the original idea was I'm going to make a film that I can afford to make if I pull in enough favors and manage to scrape the budget together. And the idea was, this is how long ago it was. Gangs of New York hadn't come out yet. Which is only interesting in that there was a Cactus Jack in that movie, and I wanted to break my own neck.
There was a Butcher Bill and a Cactus Jack in that movie.
And then the one that oh god, what was it? It was I'm just trying to think of the British gangster films. It was Sexy Beast and Layer Cake. All kind of came out, and it was like there was a British new wave of sort of gangster, low-budget, local gangster films. And I was like, maybe I can make a film like this, and it's a little bit weird, it's a little bit different. So it was London-based, it was contemporary, and then obviously we didn't get it made. Moon happened.
Did it still have the big elements like the two surgeons?
Yes,
and like
it did.
Okay.
Yeah, those were always the building blocks
and everything.
Yeah, no, those were always the building blocks. It was Paul Schrader's Hardcore. I've been watching a lot, and then Lee Marvin in Point Blank, and then MASH, which was kind of a weird three movies that I was trying to mush together. But that was the idea. It was okay, if I can have Leo's story, this guy who's unable to talk on one side, I don't think I can sustain that for an entire movie. I don't think I want to spend a whole movie with that one guy. But if I could give him half the movie, and then I could make these villains interesting enough, and spend time with them and reveal them second, third act, then that could be really an interesting structure.
Cut two.
Cut to this.
Did you see that?